Awesome. Hey, welcome everyone. This is Zac Kerr. People call me Zoob. We're here with Chris Pierce today. We're doing a webinar. The subject matter is mental toughness, and we're excited to jump into this. So, I think, what's up, Chris? Hey,
how's it going?
Yeah, dude, good. Excited to chat with you. We had a little pregame on this, and I gave you a little preview on some of the things I think are interesting. So, real quick, I think we got a lot of the Sales Rabbit users on here, broad variety of people. Obviously, we focus on field sales. And my background, I've spent a couple decades in the space doing field sales. I've ran, solar security companies, sales teams of all sizes. And now we work with a bunch of clients. And so, but generally, I also spend a lot of my time and energy just working with CEOs and business owners and software companies and just broad variety. And I think the principles of mental management obviously apply no matter who you are, what your role is, or anything like that. But why don't you, Chris, give us a high level of your background so we can appreciate the uniqueness of where you come from.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I studied sports psychology. I got a master's in it. Was mentored by one of the greats, a guy named Ken Ravizza. He was big into applied sports psychology. And so, worked with professional surfers for a handful of years, and then did a bunch of work with the military. So worked with special ops, Army Rangers, and then done a ton of work with sales guys. I found that they can use the same tools and strategies as these elite soldiers to knock doors and to deal with getting metaphorically beat down. As they spend time getting rejected and trying to keep going.
And Chris, my understanding is that you do a lot of one-on-one coaching with actual field sales reps, field sales managers, regional kind of team leaders, maybe CEOs and owners who are responsible to lead people through the development process of becoming, really first class in their sales ability.
Yeah, I kind of do two. There's two sides to it. One is, I work one-on-one with people who are in the field, right? They're on the ground and doing the work, and how they can build their mental toughness, build their mental strength so that they can deal with the adversities that are just inherent with the job. And then the other side, like you were saying, is with the leadership, right? So as a leader, I guess, one, how can I be mentally tough, but how can I help those that I'm leading to be mentally tough? That's really the two sides that I do.
Cool. And I want to ask you how you define mental toughness in as few of words as possible. But before you answer that, I just want to welcome the rest of our audience. There's a ton of people joining this, and it's really fun to see. Your questions, to those listening, your questions matter way more than mine. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'll try and get them to Chris so that this is more meaningful for you. This is about you guys, not us. So how do you define mental toughness in as few words as possible?
So I would give you two words: alignment and control.
Okay.
And if you want a little bit more, alignment, because mental toughness comes down to critical moments, right? It's not about being this mentally tough all the time. It's about being aligned with what you're doing. And then control is kind of that second piece. If you can't control yourself, then you can't control your skill set. And so you see these highly skilled individuals performing at a low level. It's because they've lost control of themselves, or they've lost alignment with the task that they're trying to execute.
But personally, I resonate more with that definition of alignment and control. When I think of the word toughness, I kind of think of like the masculine image of toughness, right? And whether you're a woman or a man, I think the masculine image is already suffering from the burden of having to be told that it needs to be tough, it needs to be hard, it needs to be emboldened. So when you talk about like alignment and control, alignment is a really interesting word, because to me, it says, I know what I'm doing. I know what my intention is. I know what my purpose is. And I'm trying to bring my human faculties in alignment with my greatest purpose or cause. And that requires me to govern my abilities, right? And to bring them into alignment.
Exactly.
So what's I guess the opposite? How do you view the opposite? I like to talk about contrast. So the opposite of that would be, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, or I know what I want to be doing, or I know the outcomes or intentions that I want, but I'm not changing my actions, behaviors, or thoughts to orient me towards that end outcome, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, well, and I see both, right? I see, like, with social media and everything being bombarded, it bombards people's lives, and people think that's what they want, but inside they don't. And so, yes, it's seeing what you want, but not doing the actions and behaviors that are going to get you there. But I think it's also not knowing what you want and chasing other people's dreams.
Okay. So this kind of seems like it's skill based. You've got skills and you've got behaviors. I guess my question for you is, like, when I do scuba dive training, I'm learning a set of skills that I practice that enable me to safely journey and venture through deep water and come out alive.
Yeah.
When I skill train or do backcountry training for avalanche safety, if I'm skiing the backcountry, I'm skill training so that I can intentionally and consciously use these skills to keep me safe. But then there's this idea of behavior. And my question for you is, do you train for and practice skill, and does it eventually change who you are or change your behavior so that it's just kind of intrinsic versus, intentionally practicing a skill? Or, like, what's the relationship between the behavior and the skill practicing of mental toughness?
I mean, so they say, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. And so if you've learned something, right? Like, so it's in your head, you read a book, listen to a podcast, you listen to this webinar. So it's up here, but you haven't done anything. You haven't applied it to anything. Then when under stress, you're going to not, the way your brain functions is you're going to bypass any of that critical thinking, and it's just going to operate based on what you've done. And so if you haven't applied it, then you're not going to do it, right? What it matters most. And so the behaviors are vital, because it's just practice, right? And again, it goes back to that quote, right? You don't rise to the occasion. You don't magically use the things that you read if you've never applied them, but rather you're going to fall to the level of your training. And sometimes, depending how high the stress is, even a little bit lower. And so you've got to build those behaviors up so that the floor, when you're under the most extreme stress, is still at a high level.
So I imagine the floor and the default level is different for a veteran field sales rep versus a skilled, multi-year experienced sales rep. And you probably see the differences. I would imagine you see patterns amongst veterans versus more advanced field sellers that you work with. But one of my business coaches would talk about behavior change. And I remember one of the things he would talk about is when you're working through behavior change, you oftentimes are, say, putting in new thoughts into your brain, call that X, and you're expecting, new outcomes, call that Y, outcomes. And there's a lag, right? It's like, okay, hey, I've been doing this thing that you've been, teaching me or learning, and it's hard, but I've been doing it for a week, or I've been doing it for a month, whatever. And I've been faithful. I've been disciplined. I've been doing this thing, but I'm not getting the outcome that I want. So how do you teach field sales reps to be patient or work through behavior change? And is there a lag factor that needs to be accounted for, when you're working on like behavior change and mental management like this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. And the biggest problem that I see in regards to behavior changes, people want to change everything, right? They're like, I'm going to do a complete overhaul of my life. And it's ineffective for a few reasons. One, if you go back to like fifth grade and you're doing a science project, right, you learn that you only change one variable at a time in order to understand the cause and effect. And so if you're changing multiple variables, then you don't know which variable is getting you the results that you want. And then, so I would say change one thing at a time for a set amount of time, and then have specifics of what it is that you're looking for as the outcome. So then once that time's over, then you can look back and say, well, did I accomplish it or not? And I just see like this industry has so many readers and podcast listeners, and everybody wants to develop and grow, but it's so shifty. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a million things all at once, where just pick one and get really good at it. Then once you've built that as your floor, then pick something else and develop and grow that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like in my own personal development, like getting really simple on the things that I'm trying to change and adjust. It actually promotes mental health and wellness for me personally, versus a lot of different content sources from a lot of different stuff. It's like, I think we grew up, being taught that being a good citizen is that we have diverse views and we're listening to a lot of alternative sources. But it's like, when it comes to personal development, it's personal for a reason. It's like, are you tailoring the things that you are personally needing to do and focus on to get to that alignment that we're talking about, right? So that requires being a gatekeeper of the content that you expose yourself to, and where you invest time and energy into the principles and things that you're learning. I grew up skateboarding, and that was my sport. I didn't do traditional sports, but I grew up skateboarding, and it was a very repetitious like activity. It's like, I remember learning how to do a backside tail slide. It was like again and again and again and again, and keep trying, keep failing, and keep trying and keep failing. But like looking back at that repetitious motion that I learned that behavior in a fun setting has totally benefited me in my business career.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've learned the repetitious motion of falling and getting up, falling and getting up, falling and getting up, falling and getting up, like doing that on, throughout skateboarding. My question for you is like, what is the relationship between being mentally tough and managing repetition? We're all human beings. We're all subject to human condition that requires these very repetitious elements of life that can be boring and mundane. But it seems like if we can get our mindset right around repetition, that it begins to serve us. I'm just curious what your thinking is around repetition.
Well, okay. So my take goes to kind of society and culture, because we have such a society. I mean, look at sports and look at even social media. We praise outcomes and we praise ease, right? Like you're watching, skating, and you see somebody do a trick and it's like, oh, wow, that looked flawless. They made it look so easy, right? And we praise the ease. And I think what that's done is it's when, even as a spectator, right? You're a 13-year-old kid and you're watching professionals. You're like, okay, so I want to do it easy. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it builds this problematic narrative in our head of like, oh, I have to do this on my first try. And so I think, if you're a leader, or even for yourself, if you want to build a mentally tough, team, going back to your question, you have to praise the work. You have to praise the effort. You have to praise the repetition. And that's how you can change the view of it. And so I don't think you can just tell somebody, oh, you're going to have to do this 1,000 times, but you really need to put the focus, the emphasis on the repetition and praise the repetition, praise the work. And I don't think there's another way to do it. It's that quote of like, it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? Like, well, let's look at that more. Let's praise the effort more than just, oh, you got the golden door this year, right? And if it's for yourself, and people are praising you for the awards that you're receiving, what I would say is fill that gap in your own head. Yeah, my bloody knuckles from knocking 1 million doors this year is why I got that trophy.
Yeah. Right? One of the things I'm thinking as you're talking is it seems like, if I'm a sales leader and I'm tasked with growing the sales capacity of my organization, one of the things I'm thematically focused on is increasing the individual capacity of my sales reps to endure that which isn't natural, that which is opposite to their comfort. And I'm trying to increase their tolerance for doing that which is hard, that which is not natural, and essentially condition them to repetitiously encounter the inconvenient, the uncomfortable, and begin to turn those circumstances in such a way where they serve the sales rep and they're able to wield an outcome that ends up serving everybody.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I see, because honestly, sales teams in this industry is good at pushing and good at getting people uncomfortable. One of the things that I see happen a lot is they do things like, okay, we're going to do an ice, bath, or, we're all going to go jump in a frozen lake kind of stuff. And okay, we're going to hike this mountain. And the expectation is that, okay, if we do these hard things, then people will figure out how to do other hard things. Now, that is true sometimes if people figure it out, but the problem is you're not being taught how to think when you're doing that hard thing. You're not being taught how to regulate your body when you're doing that hard thing. And so the transferability of it is like left up to that individual, just because it's like, oh no, we did this hard thing, so you should be able to do that hard thing. But unless they're taught the connection, then they lack the ability to take it out onto the doors.
Yeah, I'm with you using the ice bath. I love the ice bath. But using that as an example, I think, sure, it can make you feel physically good and it can give you some mental courage and discipline to govern your physical faculties. But it's interesting to think about, like, what are the lifestyle patterns, behaviors for a field sales rep outside of their professional work that they do as an individual that fortifies the mental skills, the toughness, the mental endurance that's required to be successful in their profession. And whether you're a field sales rep or an entrepreneurs, I've always said entrepreneurs and farmers are two of the most virtuous people in the world because they endure the most amount of opposition, and their success is subject to a lot of variables that can be difficult to control. So I like this idea. Is there a relationship between, mental health or mental wellness and mental toughness? It's something I'm sensitive to. I've been focused this last year. I've been a part of a men's group that it's been amazing to see how many people around me actually struggle with mental health and proper mental energy. And it, I'll be honest, part of me, when we talk about the word mental toughness, it concerns me because it's a bit has this connotation with this machoism, where I've also been really, focused on helping men to be more self-loving to themselves and to condition themselves for mental wellness. I see people, men and women, who I'm focused in a men's group. I don't mean to be sexist in any way, but women too, where they're CEOs, they're running in the eyes of society. They're very successful, but their life is not, they're not experiencing the alignment or control that you talk about.
Yeah, I think there is a connection because it all goes back to alignment, right? Like one of the most common things that people experience, at least in America, is wishing they were doing something other than what they're doing, right? I saw this comic years ago and I was trying to find it and I cannot find it. Google, it doesn't exist somewhere, but I'm sure it is, but I can't find it. Anyway, the comic was basically this guy at work, right? While he's at work, he's thinking about playing some sport, right? And then the next box, while he's playing that sport, he's, dreaming about being like in bed with his wife, right? And then while he's in bed with his wife, he's thinking about all the stuff he's got to do at work, right? And it's just this cycle of whatever it is that you're doing, you wish that you were somewhere else. And I think that goes both to mental toughness as well as mental health. Something that I did recently is I just changed everything on like my Instagram and website and stuff to these like bright colors. Like I've got pink and yellow and blue because I'm trying to get away from like, I don't know, you look at Andy Frisell is doing a lot of great work, right? With the 75 hard and stuff, but it is that like machoism, right? It's I'm going to stand here with my arms folded and my shoulders up. Everything's black. And it just, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's not about being tough. It's about maintaining control regardless of what the situation is. Whether you're in ice or whether you had the 30th person, slam a door in your face or they're calling the cops on you, whatever the situation might be. How can you maintain control of your thoughts, your body, and your behavior, regardless of what's going on? And that's what toughness is. It's not about like, whoa, this crazy macho guy.
It's like creating a state of neutrality that you can default to no matter kind of what the circumstance or pressure or environment or energy is, that rather you're kind of creating a space to respond, right? Where you pause your emotions, you pause your thoughts, you see what's happening, and then you act in a more intentional way. I think that practice, like for me personally, that practice of creating space to respond has been one of the most performative like practices or skills for me personally. I think I'm a very caring person, which makes me emotional. And so to be able to experience things, create installation, pause, stop, think about what that alignment is that I really want, and then, work towards wielding that outcome has been really meaningful for me. I would say it's become more of just a behavior now. I was listening to a Tony Robbins, a little segment this morning, talking about Robin Williams' life, talking about all of his success, his achievements, his tens of millions of fans around the world, and yet he took his own life. And one of the quotes from Tony Robbins was, "Most of us live a life where we succeed, but we're not totally fulfilled." And I just kind of leaning in on this mental health and wellness thing, in our sales teams, in our leadership, in our practices, I would just love to see more leaders committed to mental health.
Yeah.
For their people that they lead, and ensure that they're living a meaningful life. Do you have any advice on balancing, mental discipline while ensuring mental fulfillment and attainment of purpose?
My head's going two places. Okay. The first is I think about like people who live to be really, really old, right? Like over 100, what they found is that one of the most common things that they have is community, right? They have, and I think that word gets thrown around a lot, inaccurately. And so when I say community, I mean that they have multiple people who they can rely on and who rely on them, right? It's a reliability thing, and it goes both ways. And it's not just one person. It's like a bunch of people, right? There's trust and reliability there that goes in either direction. And so, I don't know what Robin Williams' situation was, but I imagine that when you're at that level of success, maybe it can be hard to connect with people, right? And have those people that you can express the deepest and darkest and hardest things that are going on without any sort of judgment at all. And so I think that's number one. And I think the tricky thing in the sales world is results matter, right? And so if you're not getting results, then it's really easy to downplay those people, as well as for yourself to feel like, well, I'm not adding up. I'm not enough, right? And people connect themselves and their identity to what they're achieving and what they're not. And so I think there needs to be more trust, needs to be more reliability, not just with getting results, but being there for people, listening. When you say, hey, how's it going? Do you look that person in the eye and genuinely want to hear an answer? When somebody asks you, do you express yourself of what's actually going on? Or do you just, oh yeah, it's cool. Right. And you just move on with your life. So that's the one side. I think the other side is we need to gain more control over ourselves, right? We need to gain control over our thoughts, our breath, and our eyes. If you can control those three things, then typically the behavior that you want to do that you're not doing becomes more likely that you're actually going to do it.
That seems like some pounds of wisdom right there. Controlling your breath, your eyes, and your thoughts. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. Okay. So your thoughts drive your emotions, right? People might say, well, no, I don't know why I was reacting this way or whatever, or feeling this way. But it really does come back to your thoughts. It just means that you're not aware of the thoughts that are going on, because some thoughts are subconscious, right? It's not like super conscious thoughts. And so you need to gain control, but also awareness of what's going on up here. Okay. Once you're aware of what's going on, then you can stabilize it, right? That's why meditation is such a good practice, because it's just being aware and then it's stabilizing your thoughts. Right. I could go on and on about that, but the eyes are really fascinating. There's this really interesting research that it shows that confident people, their eyes move less, but also that if you're lacking confidence and you quiet your eyes or move your eyes less, then it will help enhance your confidence. Right. And so if you have a specific place to focus your eyes when under stress, then it'll help you to control your thoughts as well as your breath. And it could be said about all three, right? Because then there's the breath, right? If you can control your breath, then you're more likely to control your thoughts. You're more likely to control your eyes. You're much more likely to execute your skills than if you're lacking the control.
We don't have enough time to talk about breath. I'm big on breath. It's an incredible human faculty to control. That's very interesting. We got 1 minute left. Someone asked, are you talking about MKP? I think that's Mankind Project, Scott. I'm not sure. Do you know what they're referring to?
I'm not sure. Maybe that's a men's group.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, my dear friends who have joined us on this, we've enjoyed this conversation. Chris, do you have any kind of parting thoughts for maybe high level patterns that you've seen in these organizations where you're like, dude, I see these three things all the time with sales personalities, And the thing I'm constantly advising or coaching people to do is ABC, XYZ. Like, these are the common themes. Like, just curious to end on some common practical advice.
Well, okay. So in addition to maintaining control, what I would say is focus on the it's going back to what we were already talking about, but praising what people are doing over the outcomes. And what you'll find as an organization, when you praise the work that people are doing and the effort, like I had one guy, his most proud moment or day of sales was when he sold a single, it was pest, and he sold only one, but he said it was a day that he typically would have gone home before lunch because he was tired. He didn't get much sleep the night before. It was really hot, but he stayed out there. He maintained his commitments, and he was so proud that he did it. Right. There's a similar experience, a surfer named Greg Long who died. Right. He fell on a big wave out in the middle of the ocean, a spot called Cortez Bank, and he held his breath until he passed out because he was so far underwater. But doing that, he said it was the hardest thing that he ever did, was controlling himself so much till he passed out instead of taking a breath, but it saved his life. And so when they found him floating face down, they were able to resuscitate him, and he's fine and still surfing big waves. And so maintaining control under the hardest circumstances, but praising the actions over the results will give organizations the biggest bang for their buck. And those who are struggling will see what they have to do to catch up to the big guys.
I think that's a solid capstone to a solid conversation. Chris, if attendees want to engage with you or follow you, how do they find you? How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, hit me up. I'm on Instagram, Chris_Pierce. That's, shoot me a DM. I'll go call me 808-347-1248. Like, that's my cell. Like, shoot me a text first, so I know it's not just a weird number calling. I just like to make things easy. So
cool. Hey, yeah. Chris, appreciate you. Thank you for the conversation. Have an awesome day. It was really good to be on with you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. This is a ton of fun.
Cool.